TikTok is everywhere now. It seems no matter what platform you're on, you've probably heard, whether it be through YouTube compilations or just reposted onto Instagram Reels, you're bound to run into it during your doom scrolling. But to me at least, it seems like this app was just able to blow up out of nowhere. Most know the story of how Musical.ly was bought out by TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, but it's actually way more complicated than just a simple rebrand. From a historical perspective, the rebrand should have never have worked. Vine, a platform that had over 200 million active users, managed to be considered a complete failure and eventually shut down. But TikTok, a very similar platform in nature, has managed to take over the internet while simultaneously putting all other social media platforms into a rat race just to implement their own TikTok clones into their apps. But what made TikTok different from these failures before? And how are they still so successful? Well, first, we need to start with a quick history lesson. Vine is often considered the predecessor to TikTok, and in many ways it was. Vine was founded in June of 2012, and by October, the original creators had already sold the idea to Twitter. Yes, it is Twitter, not the name X or whatever Daddy Elon has decided to call it, for an estimated $30 million before there was even a finished project. I just would like to take a sec and applaud the creators of Vine for a second, because that means they made $30 million in 5 months. That is unheard of. And if you want to help this channel make money, consider subscribing. But seriously, the support on my past 3 videos has been absolutely insane for a basically blank channel, and it really does mean the world to me when people leave such amazing comments. Anyway, now that I'm done with my spiel, we can get back to the wild story that is Vine. At the time, Twitter was limited to only 140 characters per tweet, and they were looking to add a video sharing element to the app. Vine's basic premise of a short 6-second looping video lended itself perfectly to what Twitter was looking for, and they launched the app in 2013. The app itself began to blow up as by 2015, the app had an active user base of over 200 million. For reference, Instagram, which was started 3 years earlier than Vine in 2010, had an active user base of 370 million users in 2015. Vine also gave multiple great creators their start. People such as Logan Paul, Jake Paul, David Dobrik were able to start their massive careers off an app that transcended the platform. Okay, maybe great creators was an overstatement, but my point still stands that the huge user base was creating celebrities left, right, and center on the app. But by 2016, Twitter had announced that they were already planning on shutting down the app. And this was for 2 main reasons. 1, they didn't have a use for it, and 2, they could not for the life of them figure out how to make it make any money. Now, I mentioned earlier that Twitter had originally planned to use Vine as its own video sharing service, but it decided to create a 30-second video sharing feature for Twitter instead of using Vine's 6-second feature, leaving it with no purpose on the Twitter app itself. And now onto the bigger reason, it refused to make money. Now, you would think a multi-billion-dollar company would be able to find a way to make money off an app that had over 200 million users, but it just couldn't. Now, there was actual reasons for this. First, the platform was incredibly unfriendly to advertisers in a couple ways. And the first is that the 6-second format didn't really give companies the opportunity to demonstrate their product in such a short time. Many companies began doing endorsements to specific creators, but quickly realized that things such as Facebook and Google ads had a much better value for the company compared to Vine. Now, this brings up an obvious question. If Vine and TikTok are so similar, then why did Vine die, but TikTok is now a social media giant and actually making money? Many consider TikTok a simple rebrand of Musical.ly, and well, that's sort of true because it's actually a rebrand of a different app that was also rebranded. We have to go back to the ancient history books of 2014 to see that the original version of the app was almost a completely different idea than what Musical.ly would become famous for. Instead of 15-second to minute-long clips of people lip-syncing, the original app, called Cicada, was meant to be educational. The idea was to host teachers and professors giving 3 to 5 minute long lectures of the subjects that they knew. This is not a bad idea in all honesty, but it just didn't work. The creators eventually shifted as they began to run out of the startup funds that they had raised, and Cicada was rebranded in July of 2014 into the social media fad now known as Musical.ly. By 2015, the app boasted over 30 million active users in its first year, which created graphs that look like this. Similarly to Vine, the company faced cash flow problems and were forced to sell in 2017. But luckily for them, the perfect company was looking to buy. ByteDance is a Chinese company that currently does over $58 billion in revenue, and largely due to its part in the original creation of Douyin. Now, if you are wondering why you've probably never heard of Douyin, an app that has over 743 million users, it's because the app is not available in most of the Western world. And saying that's where almost all of the people that watch my videos come from, the fact that this app even exists might be a surprise to most. And just to put that 743 million user count into perspective, 743 million people would make it the third largest country in the world, over 2 times the population of the US. Now, you may think I've been stupid and have been mixing up the Douyin and TikTok logo in this segment, but they actually share the same logo. Douyin was widely successful, and by the time the opportunity to buy Musical.ly came up, ByteDance was already looking to expand into the US market. For an estimated $1 billion, ByteDance bought Musical.ly, and by 2018 had rebranded the app to the now famous TikTok. TikTok blew up in the Western world, and just 4 years after its creation, had over 1 billion monthly users. Not million, billion. That means 1 out of every 8 people in the world use TikTok. And that doesn't count the users in China, as the Chinese-based app is actually banned in China, with Douyin being almost the same app. But what makes any of this different from Vine or Musical.ly that came before? All of them are relatively the same concept of short-form content platforms that had huge user bases, but the other 2 failed and TikTok survived. The reason's pretty simple actually. It's all due to the algorithm. ByteDance was at the pioneering front of making an algorithm that was able to easily tell which content its users liked and didn't like. The algorithm was so successful, the company claims that the average user spent over 70 minutes per day on the app, and I believe it. I remember when I found out about YouTube Shorts, something relatively similar, I was spending all of my time on Shorts and it felt almost impossible to pull myself away from my phone and do the things I needed to do. Now, this algorithm did not just keep people on the app, but was also able to be applied to the ads on the app as well. This part in particular is what makes TikTok so profitable. When before on apps like Musical.ly and Vine, the ads were never really the most efficient, and Google and Meta/Facebook apps always seem to provide better returns for the companies. But the cutting-edge TikTok algorithm let companies get the most specific demographic possible, leading to more profit for the company's advertising. To see this, we can look at something called ROAs, or return on assets, which is a measure of the amount you spent on your ads versus how much you made from the ad. A good Google ad is considered around 2 to 1, or if you spent $1 on the ad, you would earn $2 as a result. Now, let's compare that 2 to 1 ratio to TikTok. Well, exact figures are hard to come by. It is commonly assumed that TikTok's ROA is roughly 2.5 to 1. That 0.5 difference may seem small, but that is a 25% increase just by switching the platform that a company chooses to place their ads on. And when you are spending millions of dollars on an ad campaign, adding that additional 25% to your investment is a decision any company would make in a heartbeat. This is one of the major reasons TikTok was able to avoid the major problem of running out of money, as they were able to make over $11 billion in ad revenue in 2022. Again, this figure doesn't count apps such as Douyin, the app where the majority of ByteDance's money comes from, which made roughly $20 billion in 2022 compared to TikTok's $11 billion, showing just how powerful the algorithm that TikTok created really is. Once everyone saw how much money TikTok was able to bring in, every other social media platform was left scrambling to play catch-up. Instagram first introduced its Reels feature, a basic TikTok clone for all intents and purposes, in August of 2020. YouTube Shorts were introduced shortly after, in September of 2020. Now, this act of copying other platforms isn't uncommon either. Think of something such as social media stories. Pioneered by Snapchat in 2013, other companies began implementing similar features into their apps, as well as Instagram introduced an almost identical story system in 2016. Things like the story feature in other apps, though, almost acted as a fad. What TikTok did was prove something was profitable. A want for short-form content has always been there. The user base that Vine and Musical.ly accrued proves that. But the reason that these companies started to implement their own versions after TikTok and not Vine and Musical.ly was because they saw the absolute dump truck loads of money TikTok was producing, and they wanted a piece of the pie for themselves, and it began working too. Meta, the parent company of Instagram, had over 1/3 of its advertisers use Reels ads instead of other conventional ads, either on Instagram or Facebook, generating an additional $10 billion yearly for the company. This just goes to reinforce that missing piece from Vine and Musical.ly was the algorithm. As ads get more and more precise with their target audience, companies are showing that they are willing to spend more and more as the returns they get justify it. In turn, this gives the companies that host the content the revenue to support their platforms that do short-form content. But is more short-form content a good thing, and should you even be using apps like TikTok? Now, there's a lot of debate online about how short-form content such as TikTok and YouTube Shorts shorten your attention span or make you dumber, but I'm not here to talk about that. In my opinion, there are two main reasons not to watch short-form content or use TikTok. The first reason calls back to that statement earlier on the video, that the average user spends roughly 70 minutes per day on the app. Now, besides all the funny memes, try and remember anything useful from the last time you watched some form of short content. You most likely can't. For me personally, when I watched YouTube Shorts a lot, I was caught in a constant cycle of one more video or just 5 more minutes. But in reality, that would always turn in an extra 10 to 20 minutes I spent procrastinating the things I needed to get done. Now, I'm not saying that short-form content is the only reason for procrastination in society. Even after having had to force myself to stop watching shorts, I still procrastinate all the time. But I am saying that short-form content allows an avenue for people to indulge in their procrastination more than they would in other circumstances. You're not going to magically gain an extra 70 minutes in your day by not using TikTok, but you will probably gain 30 to 40 minutes of time that you didn't keep saying just one more video. Now, the second reason not to use TikTok is pretty simple. They know everything about you. Apps like TikTok have become notorious for the amount of things that they track in the app, leading to restrictions in the EU and even an attempted ban due to the amount of in-app tracking happening in the US. But what made the TikTok algorithm so successful is its ability to track all of your habits. This not only gives an optimized feed to keep users in the app, but data to sell. Also, apparently the privacy policy that you are required to agree to before using the app allows TikTok to actually track your private messages, your exact location, and apparently even estimate your household income. These things are all really scary to think about, and especially the fact that most of this data is just sold to the highest bidder. But this is more of a topic for personal research, so you can evaluate the risk associated with using certain apps with that much tracking on them, and then make a personal decision on whether or not you want to continue using that app. If you got this far into the video, I just want to give another huge thank you. I put a lot of effort into these videos, so it always makes it feel worth it when people actually watch them. Also, I'm curious what types of content people want to see in the future, so leave any topics you think are interesting in the comments below, and maybe they'll get made into videos.